Here we go. Welcome, y'all. How's everybody? I got a great guest here tonight. Had to go all the way up to Maryland to get a hold of him. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Go for it.
All right, my name is Christopher Mehl. I go by Chris. I am a not lifelong, but longtime hunter, lifelong angler, and recent author of a book called Fields, Rivers, and What Remains. That's a book of short stories on hunting, fishing, and most importantly, dogs.
Man, that sounds fantastic. You hunt with dogs too, right?
Oh, yeah. That's my
Tell me,
favorite kind of hunting, yes.
tell me about your dogs and tell me what kind of hunting you do.
Well, I started out bird dogs. Those are my first three dogs were a setter, a Labrador Retriever, and a Weimaraner when I first got started. And we somehow those dogs ended up being good dogs. I trained them myself, and I think it was mostly luck. But that's kind of what got me started. We moved to Maryland after I finished graduate school, and I quickly discovered that at least where we're at in Maryland, there's not a lot of birds. At least the type I was used to chasing. So I needed to expand, and I started chasing rabbits, squirrels, a raccoon here and there. So my second dog, or fourth dog now, second string, if you will. I got a mountain cur, and it was with him that I started, doing the rabbits and squirrels and things like that. And now I have a mixed breed. She's my princess, but uh, she's helped me get a squirrel or two. And I have a bloodhound. He's kind of my main dog now, and I have a lab that's just turned 2 that I'm working with. He's got a little bit of gun sensitivity, so we're got a lot of work ahead with him, but he's a good dog. So I just started some of the things that are out here that I wasn't aware of when I first moved here were snipe, and we do have woodcock, both migratory, and there's a population here year round. So I've been hunting those the last couple of years also.
So you're getting into the birds a little bit too. I
Yeah,
love I love squirrel hunting, man. I love working with the dog. I think my favorite part of it is actually training the dogs. I really don't care nothing about pulling the trigger. I do it from time to time. I'm pretty good at that too. But I'm not a trophy hunter. I don't have a single trophy mounted in my house. A lot of people don't believe that. The first deer I ever killed was a rack buck, but I never had one mounted. Tell me about the book.
well, the book is something I started on about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer. I originally started working on a blog when I first had kids. There were a couple things. My first three dogs were kind of getting older, and we just gotten the cur. So I was kind of, I was learning some new things, and I was trying to remember some of the old things, some of the first few years of hunting trips with my first three. So I had started a blog back then, and it was also a little bit about I was trying to introduce my daughters to fishing and hunting, and so the blog was kind of about that, and that kind of got the genesis of some of the stories. So the blog kind of became more work than fun after a while, and real life kind of catches up to you. And I was kind of in that place where I could either go hunting or I could write about it, and so I went and kind of put down the blog for a bit, and then kind of came back to writing, working on stories here and there. And then a few years ago, I accidentally ordered a book. It wasn't what I thought it was. I thought I was getting another one, and this book shows up, and it was just a book of short stories, bird hunting stories, and it was by a guy that wasn't a writer. So he was not, most outdoor writers are, you know get their start in magazines or something like that. They've been, that's what they do. This guy was a retired pilot, and and it was a pretty good book. And I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. It's something I'd always wanted to do ever since I was a kid. I used to, my original plan in high school was I was going to be a writer, and then kind of got sidetracked in college with mathematics of all things. But I figured, like I said, if he could do it, I could do it. So I got serious about it, and over the last 2 years, really kind of put it together, polished up. Started with some of my old stuff and wrote a lot of new stuff and polished it up and got it into a structure that kind of made sense. And that was that. And I self-published it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, which is it's a great outlet if you can do it. I didn't want to lose any money on it either. So that was a pretty good avenue for me. So
have you got a copy of the book handy right there?
I do. I don't know. Let's see if we can get it.
We can all see it.
Yeah.
All right. Pick one of those short stories and read us a little bit there.
Oh, so one of the ones I like the most is called Ghost Farms and Roosters. I came to hunting later than the rest of my friends. Well, they grew up chasing birds with their dads and grandfathers. I didn't even own a shotgun. Every year, they made a pilgrimage to the windswept plains of eastern Colorado to hunt pheasants. After a couple of seasons of my dogs and I learning each other's rhythms, they finally invited me along. I brought Loki, my Weimaraner. He was my best trained, sure, but more than that, he was my partner. We'd spent 2 seasons learning each other's language, and I knew I could trust him in the field. He hunted with heart and precision. He was, without a doubt, my favorite. The group consisted of 3 friends, Matt, John, and Clint. I'll use these names to protect the innocent, avoid stirring up trouble. With John's father, Max, leading the way, they typically hunted near a small town called Holly, located at the intersection of U.S. Highway 450 and Colorado State Road 89, a dot on the map just a few miles from the Kansas border. Back then, Holly's population was under 1,000, and it boasted little more than a bar, a hotel, and a gas station. The year I joined the group, the hotel was closed for repairs and a lack of business to fund them. So we stayed in Lamar, another town along Highway 50. With over 8,000 residents, Lamar felt like a bustling metropolis by comparison. As far as Prowers County was concerned, Lamar was the big city, home to 75% of the county's population, and the only municipality in the county with its own police department and hospital. They even had an Applebee's.
Where were you living at this time? I picked up that you were just shy of Kansas.
Yeah, well, that's where we were at. We were living in Aurora at the time. So I had just gotten married the year before. My wife and I had just bought our first house. We had needed a house to do it, so it was our first house, and that was about 2 hours, I think, drive, maybe 3-hour drive from Aurora was where this place was. So it was just this little speck on the map. And what was interesting about it, the reason I called it Ghost Farms, is it was mostly just abandoned farms and houses. They were owned by somebody, the bank usually, because it was hard times, drought. Most of where the pheasant were just abandoned buildings. They were a lot of abandoned houses. A lot of them were stone, like concrete houses. So the only thing that was left was like the walls and foundation, and the roof had rotted away or kind of been overtaken by vines. But it was a neat area, and we had good luck. That was one of my dog's best days. Actually, was that day. We had it was a limit of 3, and I managed to, with a long day of hard work, he and I came out with our limit. It was one of the best retrieves he made. We'd kind of worked this area, and we got to this. It was like this low, wetter area, low spot in the farm. and it was covered by thorns and stuff. And we put up, he pointed, we put up a bird. We all shot at it, so who knows who hit it, but it went down like right in the middle of the thorns, and we couldn't get to it. And Loki
We
just
call those a wee bird.
yeah.
When we all shoot at it, it's a wee bird.
Yeah. Loki went into the thorns and stuff, and he was in there for a while. He came out. He was, his ears were torn up a bit. He was bleeding, but by God, he had that bird. And my friends were like, "Well, you keep that one. He earned it." So it was a good day. He was a good dog.
So you're in Western Maryland, right?
Well, we call it, it's Southern Maryland. I'm on the what we would call the Western Shore. So I'm not very far from the Chesapeake Bay, maybe 5 minutes, would consider to be the mountain region.
I spent a little time up there in Maryland, a little town called Laurel, Maryland. You probably know where that is.
Yeah.
And you probably know what Laurel, Maryland is.
No. What do you mean?
It's the National Security Agency. That's what.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it is. I would think Fort Meade would be what I usually think of for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Puzzle Palace, that great big funny looking building. I spent a little time there. Spent a little time, probably a little more time than I wish I had spent there actually. What I was blown away by was it was either Maryland or New Jersey, one of the two. I couldn't pump my own gas.
That's New Jersey.
So
yeah,
come rolling up in there. I'm driving a little car, come pulling up to the gas pump, get out and start getting ready to pump my gas. Guy comes out yelling at me, "Stop that.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing? You know better than this." And of course, the car I was driving had New Jersey plates on it. So he was fussing at me. But as soon as I opened my mouth and I said about 3 words, he was like, "Never mind, just get back in the car. I got this." He knew I wasn't from around there.
I don't like people touching my car, but nobody likes people touching their car. It doesn't matter how bad the car is. You don't want somebody messing around with it. But yeah, New Jersey's weird. Now we can pump our own gas here. Thank goodness. Calvert County is where I'm at.
Okay. You spent a little time in the Army too, didn't you?
No, I worked with DIA when I started out, the Defense Intelligence Agency. I was a civil servant though. Most of my career has been supporting NAVAIR, various weapon programs that we got down here. So it's good work. It's interesting stuff. I like it. Pays the bills.
I get it. Pays the bills. That's what's important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they send me a check not to do anything. So my nephew just graduated from the Air Force Academy. He's going to flight school. He's going to be a pilot. He's already flying.
Okay.
I mean, he's already flying, but I mean, he's going to fly some more, right? So I told him, I said, the secret to this thing is you stay until they're willing to pay you to stay home.
Yeah.
It's 25 years for them to pay you to stay home. That's fine. But wait, you stay until they're willing to pay you to stay home. Now, when they tell you can go home, we're going to keep paying you, you head on out the door and tell them thank you. And you can go do something else if you want to. But don't you dare go in there and get started and get your foot in the door and then stop. Stay until they're going to pay you to stay home. That's the rule.
Yeah, that's the way most of the folks I work with do it. They the retired guys, you get they'll retire from the Navy down here and then go work for the civil service or a contractor and get their retirement and get their paycheck for a while, and then they'll retire again, and that's a pretty nice gig. I wish I'd thought of that when I was younger. But
well, we all got our lanes that we take. So you mentioned that you were thinking about you want to be a writer and you got hung up in mathematics. Math is a whole language unto itself,
Yeah. Well, when I went off to college, my father said I could do whatever I wanted as long as it was a technical degree. by which he meant some sort of engineering. And I come from that side of the family as a long line of engineers. Grandpa was a chemical engineer. My dad's a mechanical engineer. My uncle's a chemical engineer. And so my act of rebellion was mathematics. I like it. I'm good at it, and you sort of fell in love with it. And I did, I want to say that career, I think, helped me be a better writer. I've had to write my whole career. I mean, technical papers or briefs or things like that. And I think learning to be concise sort of helped me arrive at the writing style that I was going for, or that I liked. It was a windy road to get here, I guess, but I probably wouldn't be here if I didn't take that road. I'm sure I would have gotten sidetracked otherwise. But yeah. While I'm off on the math tangent, I did my doctoral dissertation on a model for chronic wasting disease in mule deer. When I was in grad school,
You got to tell us about that now. You got to tell us about that.
Oh, it was relatively early on, I guess, at least as far as chronic wasting disease in Colorado was concerned. I mean, it was they were seeing it in mostly in whitetails, but it was starting to show up in mule deer. And my advisor told me to pick something that I loved, because by the time I was through with it, I was going to hate it. And I was, like all new converts, I was very much into hunting. I had just started a couple years before, and so I figured, well, I'll do something about deer that's kind of relevant to that space. And it was, so at the time there wasn't a good, what I'd call a spatiotemporal model, so something that describes how it spreads geographically and how it evolves over time. There was a model, but it was not, it wasn't a statistical one. It was sort of it was just a model. They made some assumptions, they turned the crank, and it spat out answers. I was trying to adapt human epidemic models to a wildlife disease. So it had all sorts of twists and stuff to it. One of the catches at the time is, to test a deer for chronic wasting disease, you have to kill it. So there were some issues with the data, but it was new at the time, and it had some results that, I'm not sure how useful they were long term, other than I predicted that it wasn't going to go away, it wasn't going to burn out, it was going to reach a steady state, that it was kind of stable, and it was always going to be there. And at least so far, that seems to be true. But yeah, I kind of got away from it after graduation, but I was pretty into it in grad school, and it remains something I follow just because of interest. I mean, it's interesting to any hunter, especially deer hunters. But I'm glad we don't have it in the region I'm at. We have other deer diseases that are also bad for the deer, but a little less concerning for people.
Well, the chronic wasting disease, I actually am concerned about. They keep saying it does not cross into humans, but I actually had a family member die from mad cow disease in the United States. It happens here. It happens more often than people think.
Yeah.
And I had a family member die from it, and that stays in the back of my mind every time I go hunting. So that's why I said, you got to tell us about that. If you did a paper on it, we want to hear it.
Well, it was just a mathematical statistical paper. It wasn't anything about the biology. that that's outside my lane, definitely, and outside my expertise. But yeah, it's here to stay. It's persistent. I mean, we've learned a lot of stuff about prions since that are more concerning. I think I felt better and we didn't know anything about them when we learned just how long they stick around and just how hard they are to get rid of. That explains why the disease lasts so long and is hard to get rid of.
They're persistent in the environment for decades, right?
Yeah, yeah. It takes very, very high temperatures to kill them, to denature the protein, and not the sort of temperatures that even a forest fire would create. And we're talking thousands of degrees. It's so once they're there, they're there. They get in. At least I think what we've learned now is they seem to get into the soil, and once they're in the soil, they get into the plants. Things eat them, and and it's there. So it's here to stay probably, unless someone comes up with a some sort of chemical medicinal treatment for it. I expect it'll be around a while.
So what did the math say? You said it was a mathematical thing that you did. Explain the math to me.
That. And what I was trying to do was take a disease model differential equation that describes how epidemics evolve, right? And it's basically it's analogous to a predator prey setup. It's the same set of equations that you can use. So, you have this interplay between the population of prey and the population of predators, and they kind of the two equations kind of feed on each other and evolve over time. They get to a stable state. You have the same thing with susceptibles and infecteds. So based on those equations, I was trying to use data to fit parameters to those differential equations and then see how the system would evolve. And I was able to get data after some difficulty with the state of Colorado. It was public data, but they didn't really want to share it. I managed to get them to share it, and what it showed me, and admittedly it was my model. It was it's still relatively simplistic, but it showed that there would be I had parameters for the thing we were after was what was called prevalence, so basically the proportion of the population that's infected, and there's parameters in there for how fast the disease spreads and things like that. And based on that mix, there was a stable state. So I called it the banana curve, because it was three of the parameters kind of form this neat little ridge where they kind of will naturally all want to fall along. Then there was going to be a long-term prevalence that was greater than zero. So it was going to want to live in this area. The population would support some percentage of deer that are infected with CWD all the time, is kind of what that says. And so it'll fluctuate around there, but it's that's the stable state it will seek. And that was not zero. It wasn't something that long term, at the time they thought it might burn itself out. They thought enough deer might get it if we killed the ones that we saw that were sick, and if we culled things right, then we could wipe it out, reduce the population density enough that it would go away. And that my model suggested that wasn't going to be the case. And I think long term it kind of showed that it was right, that it doesn't seem to be the case. The management efforts haven't been effective in eliminating it. Maybe keeping it at bay, maybe not. But
well, if these prions live in the environment for decades,
yeah,
I guess not live. They're not alive, are they? Not live.
no, not life as we know it. It's a protein, but it's not like as complicated as a virus, but it's almost. I'm not I'm not really an expert in that. All of those the spongiform encephalopathies, Creutzfeldt-Jakob's, mad cow, all of those diseases, are all come from the prions, and so those are kind of unusual in that it's a protein, not a virus or a bacteria that's causing it. So
Yeah. And that's actually pretty scary. Like you said, I wish we didn't know about it.
yeah,
Yeah. But that's
yeah.
interesting that you did a paper on that. That's
Well, it was like 25 years ago now, I guess. So that's definitely come a long way since. I guess I could go back and say I told you so to a couple people, but you know.
so you got any questions of me?
Uh, well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I've been checking out your stuff, and I know you usually seem to handle heavier topics, which, wow, that's like my worst nightmare. Some of the things that you've talked about with dogs disappearing and just getting shot. So, but yeah,
People are mean. People are absolutely horrible and people are mean. But it's not just in the hunting community. You pick any community you want to, and there's mean and evil people there too. Um,
yeah. I mean,
I'm kind of a high tech redneck, so I enjoy hunting, fishing. I enjoy hunting with dogs, but I'm also into electronics, and believe it or not, I'm into cars. So in the electronic section that I travel in, or the car section that I travel in, there's people that act exactly the same way. I mean, exactly the same way. In one of my other forums that's not hunting related at all, had a guy today just absolutely just being nasty in the comments for absolutely no reason. It's it's not just hunting people, it's everybody. But I have noticed that in the hunting forums, everybody that lives in an apartment is also a rancher and a chicken farmer. All are, man. Every last one of them. They all got a bunch of cows and they got chickens. They're all in that apartment with them, but because they're all always worried about protecting their livestock. I don't really know how many cows and stuff you can get in an efficiency apartment, but evidently they got them up in there.
yeah, that'd be a tight squeeze, but huh? Yeah, I want to say that the social media and the new world, makes people braver, you know, behind the anonymity, with the keyboard than they are in person. But I'm still amazed at how many crazy things actually happen in person still. I've seen on your stuff, you get some wild comments.
I had an attorney that I was talking with last month, maybe it was April, but I had an attorney in that was telling us about different things that were going on in the North Carolina legislature. He's actually an attorney and a lobbyist. That's what he does full time. He's a lobbyist. And we were on YouTube, just like you and I are talking, and he's telling the different things. And I wasn't paying attention to the chat or to the comment section at all. And he called me the next morning. He's like, "Man, I want you to turn that stream off for a little while." He said, "You need to go look at the comments." There was a guy in the comments that was threatening to really harm the lawyer.
Wow.
No idea why, but I mean it was threats like he went to the sheriff's department and said, "You need to look at this." So there was no way the guy could have acted on anything, but I mean he was just downright nasty. And there's no need for that. There really isn't. And
No, I understand that some people are I mean, hunting can be a sensitive topic for some people. Um, I am lucky that I live in a part of the state where it's not unusual. If you say you hunt, they're not going to look at you or crazy or curse you. But I've also lived in places where that wasn't the case. I was born in Southern California, actually. So if I ever go back, when I go back and visit my cousins or something, you talk about some of my activities, and people would look at me funny, and if they weren't family, they might have been throwing things. But yeah, it's you know
Isn't it amazing that people have no idea
yeah,
where the food comes from?
it's one of the things that motivated me to get my kids to to at least try some of these things. And I took them often when they were kids. My oldest daughter, she got her first goose, and and after she got her first goose, she was happy, and hasn't really been interested in being cold in a goose blind since. But I wanted them to be aware that there was more to it, that there was meat requires something to die, and that's
Yeah.
it's just the way it is, circle of life, and
Yeah, they don't
we're
have a factory. They don't have a factory in the back of the grocery store where they just make this stuff. It comes from somewhere. Beef is a cow,
yeah,
pork is a pig, chicken's a chicken. Chicken's not special enough to get its own code word, but venison's deer.
yeah,
And it that's where your meat comes from. I've had people that have told me I'm just absolutely horrible because I hunt or whatever. And they stand there and fuss at me wearing leather shoes and a leather belt. They drove up in a Lexus with leather seats.
yeah. I used to think that was a joke. I've heard it on podcasts and stuff. I used to think that was a joke, but I did actually hear someone tell me, that I should get my meat from the store like a normal person, because that's where it comes from. And I was like, you know, how can you be that out of touch? But people are. I mean, I think we're getting better. I think there's enough awareness about it. I think there's, between TV and things like that, I think there's enough awareness. COVID got a lot of people out. We saw an uptick in new hunters during COVID for the first time in a long time. So that's good. But
Speaking
but
of that,
yeah,
you know what we did the first weekend that the lockdown started? We w- we
no.
went we went hog hunting. We loaded up dogs. There was a farmer around the area that had a bunch of hogs on his property. He wanted to get rid of them, and we loaded up 8 or 10 dogs and went out and surrounded the farm and went hog hunting. We chased the hogs out with the dogs and took care of business. Had a deputy sheriff show up. I was standing on the back of my truck with a rifle, literally looking through my scope, getting ready to shoot a hog, and he hit the siren. And I turned around and looked at him like, "What's wrong with you?" And I went ahead and shot the hog and laid my rifle down on the top of the dog box and climbed down off the truck and started walking out where the hog was. And he got out of his car and started walking towards me. And he's like, "There's a quarantine." I said, "Well, it says we can get food." I said, "There's a whole bunch of meat laying right there." I said, "But there is a quarantine. Don't come too close to me. I don't know if you're sick or not. I'm not sick." I said, "But I'm getting ready to go out here and catch my dog, and I'm going to drag this hog back to the truck. If you want to stick around, we'll hook you up with some pork chops and stuff. That's up to you." And he said, "Somebody called on y'all." I said, "Well, go tell them we're grocery shopping." And he hung around the rest of the day with us. He kept looking at that fresh pork we had laying there, and he hung around the rest of the day and helped us clean the pig. So, it wasn't too bad. But
Yeah,
that's
we a lot of states had it better than we did. That's for sure. We Maryland was one of those. A letter from my work saying I was essential so that I could drive around. Yeah, it was crazy times.
well, North Carolina didn't play those silly games.
Yeah.
They tried just a little bit, and the commander of the North Carolina Highway Patrol got on TV and said, "We're not stopping anybody without probable cause." He said, "And so that means we ain't stopping you and asking you for your permission slip." And after that, North Carolina was open for business.
Yeah, we were lucky at the time. We had the rarest of things in Maryland. We had a Republican governor at the time. As soon as things could open up a bit, he let him open up a bit. But it was yeah, it was interesting times. Everything was kind of not back to normal, but I was able to. It was nice to get out quite a bit. That's where I really kind of got back into hunting with the dogs. We'd kind of moved to working from home. They shut down the office, and so I was home all the time. And so we thought, well, we should get another dog. And so we did. And then, and then we got another one. So that was my Alice.
You can't have just one. Can't have
yeah,
just one.
well, we had two. I had a lab, a silver lab at the time, which, for lab people will probably cause them to tear their hair out, but he was a good dog. And I had my cur. He was Bowie. He was getting older, but too old to hunt, really. And so I wanted another dog to do stuff with. And so we got, she's a half lab, half shepherd, so not really a hunting dog, but I shot a squirrel over her, so she's had some success. And
taking a deer in front of a toy poodle.
And then the bloodhound was my wife drove out to Missouri during like the coldest, one of the coldest winter storms in the area. She drove out to get him with my kids and brought him home. Sometimes life kind of does this thing where, the day she picked him up, I had to put my cur down. He ended up having cancer. And
I hate that for you.
Yeah, that same day. But so when that she brought Chester home, and he's been spoiled ever since. So he took all that grief and kind of turned it into love for him, as you do.
You know what the reward is for having a good dog?
Having a good dog, it's its own reward.
The reward is you will eventually have a broken heart.
Yeah.
Because odds are you're going to outlive the dog.
Yeah. Yeah. And they get harder. They definitely get harder, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't. I always wanted a hound. We got the cur because he was smaller, and I thought, smaller dog, about the right size. And I wanted to hunt all sorts of things with him. I didn't want to give up the birds, but I wanted to kind of expand my horizons. And there was one of our neighbors was fostering I think it's redbone hound, I think you're called,
Yeah, redbone.
Yeah. And she got this beautiful dog. And I really wanted it. They were looking for a home. I really wanted it. It would have been 4. Thought it would have been too many. And so I had to wait until chat. And bloodhounds they're different, but for the type of hunting I do, it works out pretty well. They're slow. They'll go all day, but they're slow. I like to walk behind them. So that works out. He's done pretty well. I didn't know. I did discover this past winter that you can, if you give him the scent, he will find birds for you. So I actually shot a quail over a bloodhound, which is awesome.
So my beagle is named Snoopy. So old Snoopy's about 10 years old now. So I'm probably close to having that broken heart I'm talking about. But Snoopy's like that. He's supposed to be a rabbit dog. He's supposed to run rabbits, and he'll chase a rabbit, but he'll also chase a deer, and he'll flush quail. We were out rabbit hunting one day. One of my friends, Robbie, we went to school together. We've known each other since we were kids. So that's another story too. I can tell you about, we went quail hunting when we were kids, actually dove hunting. we were out rabbit hunting and we got into a covey of quail. And Robbie knocked a couple of quail down, and Snoopy run past and saw that Robbie had shot the quail. And he sniffed the quail a little bit. And next thing you know, Snoopy's flushing quail. So we stopped rabbit hunting and started quail hunting, and we took our limit pretty quick in front of a beagle, which was kind of funny. But back when we were about 15, we limited out on doves. And we had a very interesting retriever back then, Robbie's little sister. He had to watch his little sister that day, and it was opening day of dove season. So there was a handful of us boys, about 5 or 6 of us. We all took shotguns and went walking out in the field behind the house there and started dove hunting. And we'd shoot a dove and we'd send her to go get the dove. And she'd bring the dove back and we put the dove in the bucket. And we did that for a couple of hours. So when we're back at Robbie's house and we're cleaning the doves, and this brings me to another point. Kids are different nowadays. We were 14, 15 years old, and we were trusted with shotguns and babysitting children and everything else at the same time. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Robbie's mom comes home. We've cleaned the doves. We've built a fire on the grill, and we're grilling doves with some barbecue sauce in the backyard. We're cooking dinner. None of us ain't a driver's license between us. That's how young we are, right? So his sister runs over to his mama and starts telling her about our hunting trip, that Robbie had let her go hunting with us and that she got to experience it. And she started telling her mama what her job was. And her mama started laughing and said, "Sweetheart, you're their dog." So fast forward to Robbie's 50th birthday party. We're at Robbie's mama's house. We're sitting around a campfire. His sister's there with her 2 children and her husband. And we're sitting around the campfire talking, and we start talking about that dove hunt so many years ago. And Robbie looks over at his brother-in-law and says, "You ever take her dove hunting?" He said, "No." He said, "Well, if you do, she's a good retriever." He said, "But she's gotten a little mouthy as she's gotten older. You might need to put a collar on her." About 15 when you hit the button. So, but yeah, we were babysitting to retrieve doves for us. So, interesting story. So, my family, if you follow me, you know that we deer hunt and bear hunt and hunt a little bit of everything, but mainly we deer hunt and bear hunt. We got quite a sizable property we hunt on, about 10,000 acres. We own some of it, we lease some of it, and some family farms around the edges, not even counted in the 10,000 acres. We control the farms. We either own them or lease them. When the folks are in the comments talking about protecting my livestock, you know where our dog pen is? Our dog pen's on the farm. One side of the road is the dog pen. The other side of the road is where the livestock is. So, I mean, when people are saying protecting my livestock and this, that, and the other, I'm thinking to myself, one of my cousins, his dog pen is inside his cow pasture. It's inside the cow pasture, and he'll turn the dogs loose in the cow pasture if he's got calves on the ground because it keeps the coyotes chased away.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. So that's why I say these people are living in apartments with their cows and their livestock, because they don't know anything about cows and livestock. Those of us that actually know about it know they're full of it. So we bear meat. You ever bear hunt?
I have not. I have wanted to. I had years ago, I had a great chance for a shot at a bear. We used to have a ranch property. It's like 25. My in-laws had. So we had about 75 acres in southern Colorado, and I was mule deer hunting, and before we had headed out, I was gonna buy a bear tag, but I didn't. And this is back before, cell phones and all that. So I didn't get the bear tag, and I'm set up where I think I'm gonna see deer, and I see this this bear come walking across, a big black bear, and he stops at I'd put down a mineral lick for, hoping the deer would stop. And the bear sits down, sits on his butt, picks up this thing and starts licking at it, sets it down, pisses on it, and then keeps going. And the whole time I've got like the perfect shot. I mean, he's like sitting right there. I've got the perfect shot. But I didn't have the tag. Nowadays, I'd have gone on my phone, bought the tag, shot the bear. But it
you'd have
did
bought
not.
the tag first.
Yeah, I should have.
You'd have
I
bought the
thought about
tag
it.
first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
before shooting the thing. But I was thinking about it. It was only I should get and I talked myself out of it, and that was my one and only chance for a bear thus far. I haven't been bear hunting. We have it here in Maryland, but it's a lottery.
That was one of my questions I was going to
Yeah.
ask you was how did the tags work in Maryland? North Carolina, I buy my big game license. It comes with 6 deer tags and 2 turkey tags, and I can buy a bear tag. Used to come with a bear tag, but they took the bear tag where you got to buy it separate. But
yeah, you can put in for the bear tag here. They do a lottery, and then they run it for a couple until they get the number of bears they want to get. Get the number of bears taken in the first week, then that's it. They're done. I do have a friend that has some property, and you can put in as a group for a bear tag and all kind of hunt on the same tag. And if somebody gets one, then then there's your bear. I have not done that yet, not here. I'd like to.
if you find yourself down in North Carolina in November, I'll take you.
Well, I might have to take you up on that.
I'll put you on the ground with the bear. We're not climbing a tree. We're going to put some dogs in the woods. We're going to be on the ground with the bear. So it'll be a different experience, I can assure you. I took a famous country singer bear hunting with hounds, and he told me that it was a mix between rabbit hunting and NASCAR.
I bet. Yeah, we unfortunately cannot do that here. They can, I think, still do it in Virginia, at least. Still, they're fighting for it. They just barely beat it back recently. They're fighting to keep it alive. They can, at least as of now, I believe, still do that in Virginia. But my problem with doing something like that is the need for more dogs than I think my wife would tolerate.
Well, like I am, where you got your family hunting with you, everybody's got a few, and they make up, when we all get together, we got a big pack,
Yeah, that's cool. I wish we unfortunately don't live close to any family. My brother-in-law used to live out here in Virginia, and he and I would go hunting. But then they moved back west for work, and so it's just the wife and I and our 2 girls, our own little island out here. But it's not so bad. I was very pleasantly surprised when I moved, 22 years ago now. When we moved out here, I was surprised at just how many public hunting areas were close by. There's maybe 2 dozen of them within an hour, which is and that's just in Maryland. If I venture over into Virginia, there's a lot over there too. So it's the opportunities are there, and so I was very pleasantly surprised. And I grew up fishing. My parents, my dad anyway, started me fishing.
Me too.
Yeah, very early. And I haven't, when I was a kid, we lived in Baton Rouge, and I was there's one of the stories in the book. Actually, the first one is about a catfish I kept trying to catch. We lived just a couple blocks. There was a couple that had raised some horses, and they had a pond, and they had you know crappie and bluegill and huge catfish in that pond. I could fish just about. She let neighborhood kids fish there. Hop on my bike with my pole, go fishing as often as I wanted to. And I hadn't had fishing that close until we moved here, and we live just up the hill from a lake. I can go fishing anytime I want. It's just right there. I didn't realize how cool that was until I had it again and thought back about, when I was a kid and how lucky I was to have that opportunity. But because Colorado, it's a trip. It's a few hours drive to get to the mountains to trout fish. So it's nice to be within walking.
When I was a kid growing up, I could take a pole and walk. It seemed like a half a mile back in the woods, but as I've gotten to be an adult, I realize it probably wasn't 300 yards that I walked, but I could walk right back behind the house, and there was a small canal back there. I could almost jump across it, but it was full of fish. It was a canal that emptied into Contentnia Creek that emptied into the Neuse River. So the canal was full of fish. It was full of muskrat and everything else too. But I could walk right back there and fish all I wanted to. And I really thought I was doing something when I left home and went to basic training in Missouri and then went to California. California was on TV and the movies and stuff. It was the great place to be and so on and so forth. And if you'll notice, I've been all over the world, and I'm back in Tick Bite, North Carolina. So I realized that the grass isn't always greener out there on the other side,
Yeah, and you're lucky that you could go home again, as it were. I found I've been back to visit my folks and stuff a few times. I still live, where I grew up in Colorado. I did most of my growing up in Colorado, and it's just mini California now. Where I was like at the fringes of the suburbs, and right past then were farms and ranches, and now it's just all paved. I used to work at a scout camp, like an hour and a half drive from my parents' house, and when now we'd head south on this road, and it would turn into dirt road real quick, and it would be dirt road all the way to just about to the scout camp. And now it's all neighborhood. Like the whole thing is like grown so much. It's depressing, which is odd that I've moved to the East Coast, and it's a pretty rural area where I'm at, and they're fighting pretty darn hard to keep it that way. So I'm happy where I'm at. I'm not terribly happy with all the politics necessarily, but at least at least it's a small town. It's a small town area, and I'm hopeful it will remain so. I was glad that my kids had the opportunity to do things like go hunting and go fishing, because it was close. I was able to take my daughter goose hunting and duck hunting, and hunting behind the dog in a futile search for quail. But we've been able to do all of those things within an hour of the house. My youngest caught her first fish at, I think she was 3 years old, before my oldest did. And just that's like one of the coolest things in the world, to watch your kid catch a fish.
When my son was about 6 or 7 years old, he walked down to the creek that was, like I say, maybe 300 yards away. like I said, seemed like a half mile when I was a child. But he walked down to the creek and was under the bridge fishing, and he caught some little fish, little panfish. I don't remember what they were, probably crappie. I don't remember. But he was so excited about those fish. He had a 5-gallon bucket, and he was catching the fish and putting them in the bucket. The bucket had water in it. The fish were swimming around in the bucket. His mother had to go down there and see the fish. He insisted that she come see the fish. She had to come see the fish. So he got ready to leave, and he's like, we're going to take these fish home and eat them. I said, well, we've actually got other stuff fixed for dinner. We're not going to have fish tonight. I said, these are kind of little fish. Let's throw these little fish back, and we'll catch some bigger fish next time, and we'll cook the bigger fish. And I got him to agree to let's put the fish back because I didn't really want to go home and clean these little fish because they weren't real big. So fast forward, and this area is about 50 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. So I can be down at the Atlantic Ocean fairly quickly. So we're down at the ocean with the boat, and my daughter is about 5 or 6 years old at the time. She's got a little Barbie rod and reel with a Zebco 202 on it, and she just pushes the button and drops it over the side of the boat. And she's as happy as she can be. Got her Sunny Delight she's sipping on, and she's holding her rod. And I look over, and her rod's been almost in half. I said, what have you got? She said, I got a fish, Daddy. I got a fish. I said, baby, I think you caught the anchor line. Let me see. I said, let me see that rod. And I gave it a little tug, and it tugged back. I was like, you got a fish. You got a big fish. So she was trying to reel it in, and I'm talking to her, reel it slow, and the drag's going out. I could put some gloves on pretty quick. Got some leather gloves I kept in the boat so I could grab a hold of the line. I didn't want the line break on her. And I started easing the line in with my hands, and she's reeling it in as I'm easing it in. She caught a sea bass.
Nice.
And she caught a sea bass that was considerably longer than the rod that she caught it on. We had to cook that one.
Yeah.
That one went in the ice chest, and that one came home with us, and it went on the grill. But yeah, I grew up hunting and fishing myself, and I did a little trapping. Being cold and wet wasn't really my thing, and that's what I wound up every time I went trapping. That's how I wound up, was cold and wet. So I really haven't trapped in years, but I have done it in the past. But fishing, I absolutely love fishing. People hear you hunt with a dog, they think, oh my God, that's all he does. I got a nice climbing stand. I got a muzzle loader. I got food plot. I got trail cameras. By the way, I got about a 650-pound bear on camera Monday.
Wow.
He's huge. He made the list. I'm going to put it like that. He made the list.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can't get together around November. Because I do like bear meat. Bear meat is delicious.
I have heard that.
You got to cut the fat off of it, though.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I've heard that the bear fat is a great cooking medium also.
Oh yeah, makes great lard. Which reminds me, the people that'll fuss at you and say, "Why don't you get your food like normal people?" You didn't freeze on me, did you?
No, I don't think so.
You know how to render lard?
I have. Yeah, I've done that. I make my own wax and stuff. So you have to render the lard and mix it with beeswax for the lubricant for the mini balls. So yeah, I've done that. It's slow if you do it right.
You got to build we used a pot like a witch's pot, and you build a fire, and you basically pull the coals out of the fire and put it in a pot because you wanted low heat. And you put the fat in and you melt the fat, but you don't want to boil it. If you boil it, you'll ruin it. You just want to melt it slowly. And the solids fall to the bottom, and you take a dipper and you dip the liquid off the top, and the liquid solidifies, and that's lard. And interesting thing about lard is it's anaerobic. Bacteria won't grow in it. It's a preservative. So in old times, people used lard to preserve food. They would put food, they take a lard tub and they'd fill it part way up with lard, and then they would put food in it, and then they'd cover it up the rest of the way with lard, and it would preserve the food. And you'd also use it to cook with.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know they did use lard for that. I knew they did, salt, obviously.
You
Although I've yet to try.
I've salted fish before. Another thing is oil, like olive oil, pure oil.
Well, that makes sense. That if you preserve stuff in olive oil, you do lard also. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Huh.
They call these people preppers today. It's just how I grew up.
Yes.
I didn't have air conditioning. I tell people I didn't have air conditioning growing up, and they look at me like I've got something growing on my nose, but I didn't.
We didn't always. My first car actually didn't have air conditioning either. Our first car was a 78 Toyota Corolla station wagon. It had no air the air conditioning was roll the windows down. That was the
I'm gonna make you go, oh my. My first car was a 1970 Nova with a stick shift in the floor.
That's cool. My parents had a Nova too when I was a kid, and they traded it for that freaking Corolla. So I could have had a cool car as my first car, but they traded it for.
I don't know, man. A Toyota station wagon is a pretty cool little car. Plenty of room in it.
Well, I took that on some awesome adventures. We used to it would hold a lot of gear, and speaking of crazy things that we do when we were kids, I couldn't imagine. It would drive me insane if my girls wanted to do something like this. When I first got my license, so 16, 17, we would go backpacking in Lost Creek Wilderness in the Rockies for a week and a half at a time. My friends and I, we would, load up the car, drive up there, and just, disappear in there and fish and rock climb occasionally.
My son did that when he was 16. He loaded up the week between Christmas and New Year's. He loaded up hunting dogs and went down to the hunting club and stayed all week. There were some other adults in and out, but he was the only one there at night. He stayed in the clubhouse all night. He cooked his own meals. He did his own thing. He was 16.
That's cool.
It was so my child's done the same thing.
Yeah, I'm probably overly protective of my girls, but fathers and daughters, we tend to be overprotective of our girls sometimes. I've had opportunities that I kind of wish they'd had.
I got a phone call from one of the adults in the hunting club that said, I don't know how to tell you this, but your son's down here at the hunting cabin, and he's got a girl with him, and they're staying down here. I said, what's the girl's name? He said, Crystal. I said, that would be my daughter. That would be his sister. And the guy's like, you don't have a daughter. I said, yes, I do. I know I got a daughter. That's his sister. I said, the only thing is she's 5 years older than he is. So they ain't drinking, are they? Because she's old enough to buy it. So they ain't drunk, are they? He said, no. I said, well, they're fine. Yeah, that would be his sister. So.
Well, that's cool that he's, had that opportunity available to him with, and had the confidence to do that also. So kudos to you for raising them right.
Well, I did the best I could with what I had. I tried to give them a good start in life. My son's running a successful business now and expecting his first child, and I've got 3 grandsons from my daughter. So one of them, we share a name. My first name and his first name are nearly identical.
Oh, that's cool.
So I told my daughter, I told my kids, I said, don't ever name anybody your same name. Change it up a little bit. So, but yeah, I feel like I've done good with the kids. I've tried to, I've tried to leave a little something behind, leave a little something behind of me. I've written a couple of books too. I've got one on Amazon. I've got 2 on Amazon actually. But I want to leave something so that my grandchildren remember who I am. Had a scare in 2023. I was hit head on by a careless driver and actually died for a few minutes.
Jesus.
Had a complete out of body experience. Yeah, Jesus is right. I saw one of his angels while I was dead, literally out of body experience. And I came back from that and realized that that doesn't matter what age you are, you can leave this world pretty quickly. So I started writing some of my stuff down, mainly for my grandchildren. My second grandson, the one that I share a name with, he hadn't been born yet. He was doing about 2 weeks. So I didn't think I was going to get to see the little guy. I was in the back of an ambulance and they told me that I'd already died once and I might not make it to the hospital. And they set up a camera and told me to talk to the camera and tell the camera anything I wanted to say, just in case I didn't make it. So after that, I decided that I would make sure that my grandkids would be able to remember me. And I started writing things and I started talking to this camera and I started doing more things that'll outlive me.
Yeah, well, I'm I'm glad you're still around. You know, wow, that's yeah. I haven't had anything quite that life altering, thankfully. But
It'll
I'm
give you a whole new outlook on life. I'll tell you that.
yeah, I'm hopeful I'll leave some things. You know, the book's a start. I think more important than that, obviously, are my kids. I think I'm hoping they do better than I do, and they've certainly learned from some of my mistakes, so that's good. But
Isn't that always the goal? We want our kids to do better than us.
yeah,
You see, I realize that I'm a dinosaur. I'm a dying breed. Um, so you don't see many dinosaurs walking around nowadays, do you? I mean, they're not, you don't go outside and see a T-Rex in the yard, but we know they were here because they left deep prints. And that's my goal right now is to leave deep prints. I want them to know I was here. And if I were to die tonight and you walk over to my casket, you can point at me and say, that man lived. He lived. So I'm not planning on going out with regrets.
yeah. What's the saying about uh, you say tomorrow too much, too many tomorrows, and you end up with just a bunch of yesterdays,
That's
something
right.
like that. Kind of hit this point. I just turned 51, so one of the motivations for me for getting a book out and getting it done was while I was still 50. You know, since I didn't do it before, you know, I wanted to start like this optimistically, my the next half of my life. You know, I wanted the book in a sense to be sort of like end of one part and then I start the next great adventure. And we just bought an RV. And one of the things I'd always wanted to do was load the dogs up in the RV and go travel someplace and go hunt there. and I was always going to be someday, someday, someday. And my wife kind of pointed out that we weren't getting any younger, and
Don't someday make it today.
yeah, if I kept putting it off, by the time we finally get it, we're going to be too old to enjoy it. So we pulled the trigger on a few things, and hopefully I can knock off some of those bucket list items before I kick the bucket. So
you got to live now while you're alive. That's for sure.
yeah.
I've gotten kind of boring in my older age here, because by the time I was 30, I had already been to several foreign countries and met some very interesting people. I've jumped out of airplanes and helicopters. I've rappelled. How many people have flown in a helicopter sitting in the door with their feet down on the skid? Just looking at life fly past. I'd done that before I was 30. So I told you I was up at NSA. I was also at Fort Bragg. So I did the other side of that job too, with the 18th Airborne Corps. So you know what military intelligence is when you're assigned to the infantry, right? You're educated infantry. So I mean that's how that goes. So but by the time I was 30, I had done more things than most people do in their entire lifetime. I think the most fun thing I ever did and got paid for was take a dirt bike and ride it out the back of a Chinook helicopter, drop the tail, and the helicopter get close to the ground, and drop the tail door, and we crank the motorcycles up and ride out the back.
That does sound fun.
And they come back to get us, and they'd come back in. They're not hovering, they're moving. And we ride back up the ramp and get back in the bird. Now that was probably the most fun thing I've ever done.
That sounds like it.
And got paid for. I mean, that was cool. I grew up riding motorcycles too, so still got my motorcycle license. Don't have a motorcycle at the moment, but I got my license. If I decide to get one, I can. How can people find your book?
Well, it is on Amazon. So Amazon has the ebook. I did the thing where they've got the rights to the ebook until August, and it's also available in there's a paperback and a hardcover. My oldest daughter, designed the cover for all the versions, and there is artwork in here that she did also. She did some of the artwork that's in here, and she was kind of instrumental in helping me get across the finish line on it. So yeah, hardcover, paperback on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I got my Facebook thing, Southern Maryland Hunting and Hounds, is my Facebook page, and I have a Substack also where I put out some some of my writing. So earlier drafts of some of the things in the book and some other stuff. So yeah, that's me. So yeah, as it morphed from being less about me teaching my girls to more just kind of me doing stuff out, hunting and fishing outdoors, I looked to change the name, and I was surprised that that hadn't been taken. So I took it. But yeah, so that's my hunting page, and I'll put links to some of my things there, and I'll photos and whatnot from some of my outdoor adventures.
Well, that sounds great, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
I appreciate you coming on. I've enjoyed talking with you. I like talking to people that are smarter than I am. This is fantastic experience. I know math too. 1 + 2 is 3.
Something like that. Yeah.
Being funny. So, no, seriously, Chris, it's been great. It's been real great. So, thanks for coming on. Stay in there, and you're welcome back anytime. And seriously, you're welcome to come hunt with us in November, December if you want to. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not too far. It's not too far to North Carolina from Maryland.
I was looking at trying to do a hog hunting trip or something like that down there, and it did not look like it was too far. So I will have
You're
to.
gonna do that. You come deer and bear hunt with me, and then head on down to Georgia and go hunt with Bad Boars down there, and go hog hunt with him.
Well, I might be able to pull that off now that I got the RV for it. So
there you go. All you got to do is have a couple $1,000 to fill the tank, and you're in business.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Watch the needle move as you go.
My dad had an RV, and he said it got 16 miles to the gallon. It got 8 miles going and 8 miles coming back. So he enjoyed it while he had it, but he got rid of it. He said he could get some hotel rooms. He figured it would be just as good. So I said the camper was fun, but happy day when he bought it, and second happiest day is when he got rid of it. So
yeah, I've heard that. But yeah, we'll get some use out of it.
But they're fun while you got them,
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on tonight. So it'll be available on Facebook and YouTube, and then the reels will be available on TikTok and Instagram, and it'll probably wind up on Rumble as well. I do appreciate you coming on. Thanks for sharing the Maryland side of things, and I'll be seeing you. We'll be talking.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night.
Yep. Good night.